And there we go. Hey, what's up? It's Pete Thorn. I'm out at Suhr World Headquarters at in lovely Lake Elsinore, California. We are really excited to announce that today is the day that the PT15 is available worldwide. So you can basically find it Europe, States, Asia.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think there's about 100 out there in the world now. And the idea was that when we said, okay, it's available, it's not like, oh, your dealer can order it. It's like they've already done that and it's actually in the stores now and it's out there. So I know a couple people have already managed to get theirs in the UK, and I've heard some great feedback and stuff already. But this is just all about kind of answering some questions and stuff and you know, talking about the amp, and we're just super excited. I am on my Instagram right now, and I'm going to sign off here. And any of you guys on Instagram that want to check this out, please come on over to the Suhr official YouTube channel. It's just that you can just search on YouTube for Suhr Custom. It'll pop right up, and we will continue over there. Okay, so signing off on Instagram. See you guys. Thanks for joining. Okay. So we got a few people online. We got about 23 people. What's up? And Chris is here. Chris Cam. He's always a loyal viewer on my Sunday live streams. Good to see you, dude. And Sean is here. It's awesome. Good to see you as well. And everybody's saying congratulations. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks so much. We had a couple questions about the amp. Number one question was regarding the. Oh, Kevin's here. Hi, Kevin. Come in here for a second. This is Kevin Suhr, the man, the myth, the legend. There he is. He's always a character. He's actually very, very smart. So Kevin had a lot to do with this amplifier, and I've known you since you were like, I don't know. Well, you were pretty tall when I met you, but but you were probably like 10.
Tall 13-year-old.
Yeah, and now he's an EE electrical engineer, and he's got a bigger brain than I do. I always say that. And anyway, Kevin had a lot to do with the design of this amplifier. Essentially, I mean, this was your first amp project, really, right? It was, and what a task that you were given to.
Yeah, they threw me in with the sharks.
Because it was like reactive load, IRs, and then you had some great ideas though on your own, like the headphone amp and the aux jack and stuff. That was all you.
Yeah, actually, it was kind of Seiki. My coworker was like,
"Oh,
well, actually,
you're humble."
That came from the reactive load.
Oh yeah,
IR. So yeah, I had the circuit done, so it was like,
but you didn't have you were talking about putting it on the reactive load IR, and you said, what about incorporating this into your amp? I don't think you'd even put it in the reactive load IR yet when we talked about it for the amp. You were like, because I remember when you were like, I think I can do this, and it's going to be cool.
Maybe I was in the process of working on it.
Yeah.
And then I got it working, and then after that, I was like, I have it working, so we could just throw it in here.
Yeah.
It's already, I remember it being like, you know, the reactive load is already there. You already got the line level signal ready to go.
Right.
I could just throw the headphone circuit in there, and then you could play it straight out of the front of the amp too.
Right.
And then you wouldn't need any headphone amp.
Yeah. The fun part is you can just like literally plug your phone in right here, and then plug a set of phones in there, and it just mixes in with the volume here, mixes in your guitar signal with whatever. Or you can take an 1/8" jack out of like a computer, right out of the headphone out, and then plug it in right here. And that's, you know, you don't need another audio interface or whatever. It's really cool. But you also had a lot to do. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was saying, I forgot, you know, how fun. I feel like it's a little bit of an understated feature that section.
The headphone thing.
You know, when I'm testing out one of these on my bench, I'll run my iPod through it, and I'll be playing along with it, and then I'll end up sitting there for an hour and be like, oh crap.
Which is the greatest thing.
Yeah,
that's what I want to hear. The best comment the other day, one of the first guys to get one in the UK said, it's 2 a.m. and I'm still sitting here playing. My wife's in bed, and I'm so stoked because it sounds awesome. This tech is amazing, you know. And I was like, that's exactly what I want to hear, right? You know, that makes you want to play. Yeah,
I'm always a fan of reducing the amount of hardware. Like if I can play through the headphones without having to turn on my computer or having to turn on my interface, to me that's a great thing, you know.
Totally. Yeah,
it's like you could practice with your music without having to turn on your laptop and plug it into an interface and then get it monitoring through the headphones and then bringing up Spotify or something. It's like
right.
You can plug in some music through the front and just plug some headphones here and you're done.
Exactly. Now, you had a lot to do with this layout too, which is the impulse response selection.
Yeah.
And the programmability of it so that you can store IRs per channel.
Yeah.
And I love, it's just sort of very simple. Basically, you got the bank switch here. That's going to select 4 banks. And then this is which IR you're on in the bank. So bank 3, IR 3, bank 3, IR 4. And then if you're on the clean channel, you're like, oh, I love the sound of that IR. All you got to do is push these 2 buttons. Lights are going to blink, right? It'll do a little light show. Now, when I change channels, when I go here, well, wait, we got to store a different one.
You got to store more.
I got to store more. So if I go to channel 2, I'll go to a different IR.
Yeah, store something else.
And we'll store that. Now it'll be the same one for channel 3, channel 1, channel 2 goes to that one. So it's like, this is great because you can get your different cabinet sounds.
And
per channel.
The hidden feature, hold down the bank and hit channel, you can go between 2 channels.
I didn't even know that.
You know that? You knew
Okay,
that.
you might have told me that a while ago.
Yeah,
that's cool.
It was like if you wanted to swap between channel 2 and 3, and you're like trying to dial them different, but you don't. I found myself doing that. Like,
okay, that's why you did it.
Yeah, I was like, what if I'm going between 2 and 3, but I have to go back through 1 to get back to 2?
Right.
And then I might forget like what just happened. So I basically did it. So if you hold down bank, you hit channel, you're going backwards.
Amazing. And you can toggle 2 channels.
So you can toggle between those.
Okay, that's cool. I haven't been doing that. I've just been going through all 3. But
yeah, that way you can go back between. You have to really make sure
smart.
you push down the bank and then hit the channel.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you too was one of the really probably like one of the more difficult things, I guess, maybe to do in this amp was get the reactive load miniaturized small enough so it would actually fit in an amplifier, because it's the exact same reactive load that you guys put in the big full-size reactive load, right? But you were able to shrink it down, like it's like basically like half size, right? And get it inside the amp. I mean, that was a feat of engineering on your part, I think.
Yeah. I mean, Seiki helps me a lot build the chassis we had to build a new chassis, and we had to figure out, basically how we can try and eliminate interference and stuff with the load. It's right next to like the power section, so it was like we had to shield it off right. And yeah, it took a lot of work. I mean, I think some people think like, oh, you already had the reactive load built and you have the amp built. So
it's like, no,
toss it in together and it should be done.
Right, putting it in a high voltage. We were looking at it today. There's like 600 volts, like on like coming right off the power right here on the inside of this, right? And yet you've got the IRs and everything right there.
It was just it was like the never-ending project. It felt like, because it was like
a year, right?
Yeah, it was like placing everything. It's like the IRs are here, the USB's back here, the load's there. It's like I don't want the output to be near the input, so I have to put the load over here, but like where the tubes are like collide.
Right.
It was just like, I can't believe it even. I was like, I'll be surprised if we even get it done. Like,
but you killed it.
It was like it was one of those things, and me routing the boards for it too took me like, it was the longest time I've ever spent trying to route a PCB. Right. And I kept bugging my dad. Should I do this? How should I ground this? How should I ground this?
Well, so John had, of course, a ton to do with the amp too. He laid out the circuit and everything, got it all like the basics and stuff like that, of course, right? And then basically said, here's what I'm going to give this project to you. This is what I want you to build, right? Like basically, here's all the.
He basically had this front panel, like the whole layout done.
Yeah.
And he gave that to me. I added the headphone and this IR section with the buttons.
Yeah.
And the power.
Yeah.
And he gave me the schematic for the tube stuff.
Okay.
Because I wasn't, I'm not familiar with the tube stuff as he is.
Right.
That's what he's been doing for however many years.
Yeah.
So he gave me the schematic for the tube stuff, and then he was like, okay, here you go.
This is your baby. I think he wanted to see if you what you could do, and you killed it.
Yeah, luckily, I keep saying Seiki, luckily out of his help, because he helped do a lot of the physical stuff, like the box and some of the chassis and stuff. So with him and me, I did all the circuitry and the programming and artworky stuff, rendering this in 3D for you to see how you liked it.
Yeah, I mean, back at the beginning, we had some different like designs going where we didn't even know if we wanted to do this stacked knob thing, but then it was like we couldn't figure out a way to do it otherwise. And so laying all these things out you know, and then having the panels custom cut and everything, and then figuring out how to build it on the inside and make it all work is all. It's just it's like a, you know, playing Tetris or something, right? Like,
yeah.
Getting it all together takes some time. But I just love the way. I mean, when it came together, we didn't know how the double row of knobs would look, and then making the logo work and making it all fit. And I said I didn't want it to be any bigger than a Badger. Like, you know, like basically as small as possible, because we wanted to keep it. John won't compromise on things like transformers. So a lot of people, I put up a video today, and people are like, look at the size of those transformers, because they're like, you know, but he's like, they just don't sound the same when you use it, right?
Yeah, he's a fan of the heavy transformers.
But it's like the amp sounds.
It's because of the sound.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You can't, there's no free lunch, right?
Yeah,
so it's not heavy. I mean, it's 24.5 pounds. It's
no, I'm always surprised about whenever I'm carrying it how light it is.
Yeah, me too. But it is
in an unbiased way, but
right.
It is pretty light. It's like,
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But
yeah. Well, maybe we should look at a few questions and stuff and see what we got. I was starting right when you walked in to answer a couple of questions that people had asked. Number one was, is the reactive load connected all the time, except when you plug in a cabinet? And the answer to that is, there's one jack where if you plug in the cabinet, the main speaker jack, it'll disconnect the load. Yeah, let's turn it around. Actually, that's a good idea. Yeah. Yeah, so this bottom jack that's red here, if I was to disconnect that, okay, now the load becomes active instantly. And so, you know, you can run the amplifier with no fear of any damage or anything like that. If you plug this in, it's going to disconnect the load, and now you have to have a cabinet plugged in. But if you go up here and you plug this one in, now what's happening is the load is in parallel with the speaker jack. So that means the cabinet will be active and the load will also be working. And what happens then is it's going to drop your overall sound by about 3 dB, right?
Yeah, SPL.
And SPL. So it's like a bit of a one-step attenuator, really.
Yeah, you'll get a bit less volume.
Yeah,
it won't blow your head off.
I think most like attenuators out there on the market in the first click are like 4 dB or 3 dB. It's probably akin to that. Basically, it's like you're having the power of the amplifier. It's kind of like having a 7-watt amp. What you're going to want to do if you do that, if you get one of these, is if you've got 8-ohm cabinet, the load's 8 ohms. So what you got to do on the impedance selector is drop it to 4. Okay, so if you run that speaker jack, you're going to want to just turn the impedance selector down to 4 ohms. You got an 8-ohm load here, 8-ohm cabinet, and you're going to be safe then. And you can get a little bit reduced volume stuff. So that's a nice way to run the amp. So just always remember that we put the red collar there to know, like if you plug in that one, that means you're disconnecting the load. Now you have to have the speaker cabinet connected on the other end. But other than that, I mean, you can run the amp like this all day long and just use it with headphones with nothing else plugged in, or, you know, run a powered speaker on the output. One of my favorite things to do in the world is plug in on the line out, just plug in a studio monitor right out of the line out. Just take a TRS to XLR cable or whatever you need, or, you know, whatever the connector on the studio monitor is, and plug in a powered speaker off of there, and you can play through like a little powered, you know, Genelec or a Bose system or whatever you've got, you know, and it sounds really great.
Actually, we were joking around. We're like, what if we plug the headphone output on the front into our Bose like stereo on our desk?
Yeah,
so my dad did it, and we were like bumping it, and we're like, holy shit, that's pretty good. Just changing the IRs, and you're playing through some Bose like basic desktop, you know, stereo for music.
Yeah, like I want to take it home, plug it into my sound bar, like my my Samsung thing for my TV. See what it sounds like. It's so much fun. But I'm gonna just look at some of the questions and stuff that are here. Let's see. Hey, Peter, you come to the UK again to do clinics? Actually, yes. We haven't booked them just yet, but we're taking the next few days to just kind of nail it down. And it's going to be fall, it looks like. So there's going to be some stuff coming up for sure in the UK as well as other parts of Europe. Let's see. What else we got here? Should have brought my reading glasses today. Kevin is awesome, says Captain Sexy.
Who said that?
Captain Sexy. Shauna says it looks gorgeous. And you obviously. You look fantastic. So was the reactive?
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I've got a couple. If you want me to read them off to you.
Yeah, I'll just ask this one here, or answer this one. So is the reactive load IR the first digital design at Suhr? That's a good question. Was it? Maybe.
Yeah, it was.
I think so. Eh?
Yeah, it was like the first digital that we've included in anything.
Right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess that's true. Eh?
And then it carried over to this.
Yeah.
So
should we turn this back around?
we're still working on new stuff with that, but
Yeah,
that's our first kind of
first digital
foray
thing,
into
right?
the digital land.
And my good buddy Don is going to read off some questions over here.
Yeah, Josh asks, is it American or British voiced?
Oh, well, that's a great question, actually. I can get deep into that. I mean, the power section is 6v6s. And a lot of people do on lower power amps, they do EL84s. And I think EL84 is a cool tube and can sound really good in a lot of circuits. But I just wanted to kind of know 6v6s to me have been in some of my favorite amps. I had many years ago, my buddy Fred from Divided by 13, he makes an amp called the FTR37. And that was a really good sounding amp to me. It was like kind of sounded like a big overgrown deluxe reverb. So it was a double power, like a 36 watt amp. And I used that amp on the road for a while. And I always liked the way that the amp sounded good, clean. And then you could turn it up and crunch it up and it had a cool tone. Then fast forward years later, I met you guys and I got the Kelly amp, which is 6v6s. And that amp sounds great, clean to dirty, all the way across the span of the volume. I also remember playing like Tweed amps, like some Tweed deluxe style amps. There's also an amp the company called Victoria made years ago called a double deluxe, and it was like also a 6v6 tube amp, really good sounding amp. So I was like 6v6s, and John had mentioned back in around 2014 he liked 6v6s. He said, I'm going to try and build the channel 2 of the PT, just as an experiment, channel 2 of the PT100 into a little amp, and I've got this idea for a 6v6 power section. And I was like, oh cool, I wonder what that's going to sound like. So he built it. It's probably downstairs somewhere. I wonder if we could find that. Actually, we should show people that thing. I should ask him to bring it upstairs. But it's this great little, kind of like lunchbox amp that he made that was just the PT channel 2 and basically the output section that's in this amplifier. And it sounded incredible. It didn't sound like a small amp. It just sounded ripping,
Yeah,
I was like,
we were going to call that the Cane Corso.
Right. Yeah.
We put it in a little Corso head shelf in the meantime.
Yeah.
And Dad would not stop talking about how much it ripped.
It was really good sounding, but basically that's what the drive channel in this sounds like through the. So, that amp never came out. Nothing happened with that. But fast forward years later, it's like, you already found the power section because it sounded so good in that earlier prototype. Let's do this. And then made it to the 6v6s. And the neat thing about 6v6s is, to me, they sound kind of American at a lower volume. And then as you turn them up, they just kind of go, and they get this like flattened out grind that is this brawny kind of big grind that kind of reminds me a little bit more. It doesn't sound 6L6-ish to me. It's more like it's not exactly EL34, but it's got a really pleasing distortion character to me. So anyway, as far as the power section in the amp goes, to me, it kind of does it all well. Like harkening back to those other amps I was talking about, where they'll sound great clean, and then as you turn them up, I mean, it's not news. Anybody that's ever owned, a great old Princeton or a great Tweed Deluxe, there's really cool amps that sound good down low, and as you turn them up, the distortion's really cool. So, although I think our amp sounds bigger than any of those. Sounds more like a bold, the tone of it is just so bold, but like kind of big amp bold. Now, as far as the preamps go, channel 1 is real. It's really similar to the Bella, which I've always really liked that amp ever since it came out. So it's very Bella-ish. It's got a great grind if you turn it up, and it's got a beautiful sparkly kind of clean thing, or warm clean thing with the bright off, at lower volumes. So it's really sort of decidedly American. Channel 2 and 3, it's British all the way. It's basically that hot rod Marshall tone that I crave. I grew up kind of like the Plexi that was always my home base. So it does all that, I think. Pretty convincingly. Yeah. And of course, with the reactive load and stuff, you can grind up the power section, experiment with that through like a full range speaker or something down low, and you're going to be able to get. It's just kind of almost like a great education in what power tubes sound like. It's like, oh, there's all these different shades in there of tube distortion, right? Yeah,
you'll hear the difference
big time, right?
Whether you're driving the power or doing it on the preamp section.
Yeah. So it makes utilizing power amp distortion like a really easy thing to do.
Yeah,
I think,
without having to blow your head off
totally
through a speaker cabinet.
Yeah, exactly, and go deaf, which is fun sometimes.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Oh yeah, we got a bunch, man.
Awesome.
Ying Zach Lynch asks, how much gain does it have?
Quite a bit, I think. I mean,
It has much gain.
much gain. Yeah. I mean, I like to. You don't. I was answering a question about hitting it with pedals today. You don't need to use a pedal with the amp, that's for sure. It's got plenty of gain on channel 2 and 3. When I use a pedal, I like that kind of big forward mid thing that a clonny type drive does. So I use one of those for my solos because I love the way that that pedal sounds pushing an amp and how it does this forward mids thing and thickens up single notes only for leads. But you don't need it. Like the amp has tons of gain on its own.
You can hold out a note and get it to sing and ring
forever.
Yeah.
I mean, at a reasonable volume, you can get infinite sustain with the gain probably on, anywhere from about 7 to, depending on how hot your pickups are. And it sounds great across the whole, like the gain anywhere from about 2 to 10 is super usable on the dirty channels. And actually, we shouldn't discount the gain on the clean channel. If you want to use it as a second kind of barky, it's crunchy thing, it does that really beautifully. I actually did a video on just on channel 1.
I was just thinking about that.
Yeah, where
that was a really good video.
Oh, thank you. Where I turned it up a bit and got it because I wanted to show that you could, get some distortion out of that.
Didn't you do like a Zeppelin thing on that?
Yeah. I played 10 Years Gone, I think.
Yeah.
Where I was rolling down and
I
then
love
hit
that part.
bridge pickup. Yeah, it sounded good, right?
Yeah,
it's like
it did.
really got a great thing for that Zeppelin-y kind of, Yeah, I would say anything up to kind of Zeppelin grind, it'll do really well on channel 1 if that's what you want.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Related to that, Jane Wu's asking, what about the headroom in the clean channel?
Well, I think it's it's a 15-watt amp, so you got to be realistic, but about that. But yet it has a lot of it's got more apparent headroom to me than for instance, an 18-watt Badger, maybe because of Badger's cathode bias, and it's a different kind of, it's a slightly softer, squishier thing, like the cathode bias amps. But this is class AB. I think there's there's depending on the guitar you've got too, because if you play like a Strat in position 2 and 4, that's one thing. If you play a Les Paul on the bridge pickup all the time and you're looking for crystal clean, it's a different thing. So if
the pickups are
huge, right?
Huge,
yeah.
I mean, a humbucker is like way more output than a single coil. So
way more. I find like with single coils, I can put the gain on the clean channel on 5 and the master on 5 and the master over here on 5. I was doing that today down in the booth, and it's basically clean. But if I hit the bridge pickup humbucker, now it's barky and getting dirty. So you'd have to turn probably the gain down to like maybe 3, run the master up a little bit higher with humbuckers or something like that. And whether or not that's going to work at gig volumes depends entirely on the venues you play in, your band and your drummer. If your drummer's an animal or not. But I found when I played a gig with it at a local place, and what I did was I took the line out, went right to the PA, like literally cable straight into a Mackie mixer or whatever for the, it was like a club. And then we had some wedges on the stage. I said, just give me some of the wedge. And they brought it up. It's like, that's great. And then I had the master on maybe 5 and the channel masters on around 5. And I was fine. And we had a loud drummer, keys, bass, the whole 9 yards,
Yeah.
It was actually like, I was like, this works. Like I can get away with this. A little bit in the wedge and the rest coming out of the cap. So I think I'm wired. Is this? Am I talking too much?
No, I just don't talk a lot.
You don't talk a lot?
So contrast.
It's a contrast, right? Yeah, that's all right. I'm enjoying it. I'm glad you came up. This is he came up very last minute, so I'm glad you're here because you have a lot to do with this. So this is your baby. Our baby, but
Yeah.
we had a baby.
We had a baby.
So weird. Okay, what's next?
Eric asks if there's any issues with heat buildup, having the reactive load so close to the tubes.
No, not at all.
It's actually not that close, is it? Because it's in the side right here, and then the tubes are over here, right?
I don't think it's getting heat at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have my hand right next to the power tubes right now, and I feel nothing. So.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
I'm not playing yet, but
I've run it hard for 6 or 7 months now, using it into power tube distortion most of the time when I'm using it without any issues at all. And plus, you overbuilt the load.
Yeah, the load can handle. I think it can handle. I mean, at least 50 watts. I think we were thinking it can handle more.
Yeah, that's the way you built it.
The way we designed it, but
yeah,
and it's got all the load resistors are mounted to like the whole chassis, so that helps it cool down. And there's a good amount of space. It's not like it's next to the power tubes and
Right.
that's cooking.
Yeah, it's
If anything,
when you make the load, you want to overbuild, right? Like way overbuild, right? So
it doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt to have more power capabilities.
Yeah, this one's basically built for what you're saying is like 3 times the power handling of the amp.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you'll be fine with the internal reactive load.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else we got?
There's some questions about the effects loop.
Okay.
Chris, he's asking if it's series or parallel, and if it can be used regardless of what output you're using, line out or speaker.
Yeah, you can use it with either the like you can totally run a speaker, the line out at the same time, and use the effects loop. You can do all that. So we're thinking like if somebody was playing a gig, maybe they want to plug in a cab, hear that on stage, run the line out to the house and to the monitors, so that you've got your nice perfect IRs and stuff like that in the PA, and maybe if you're recording or something, and then you can run your effects in the loop. Now the loop we decided from the PT100, it's a tube loop. And we decided to sort of simplify it. So it's just a series loop. It's not a parallel loop. And we worked for a little while on getting the level right, so that it's kind of a nice cross between, it's basically, it'll work with most pedals. It's like down to instrument level, but it's got enough juice that, line level effects should work too, right? I mean, remember?
Yeah, I mean, that was an important thing for you. And I remember you had your H9.
Right.
Remember we're metering it on the H9 and making sure it doesn't clip the H9 and all things like that.
And really
you
listening.
Brought your whole pedal board.
Yeah.
With all those, I remember how many pedals you have on that board.
The Boss, the DD500. We were trying it with different, different pedals to get it so that you could nail it with hot pick. Like we used the guitar with hot pickups too, so that we could make sure that we weren't going to clip, the effects with the scent, because it's just a fixed. The loop is one fixed level, simple send and return, but it's a killer loop that's buffered properly in the whole 9 yards. So you're going to be able to run long cables out to your pedal board if you have to, because that stuff's really important to me, because I do that live with the head's back by a cabinet, and then I need to run like 25 feet of cable sometimes out and back to the pedal board. So the buffering and stuff is all tight, right? They don't mess around here. Your dad's kind of fanatical about effects loops. So.
Yeah, and he's the one who gave me the effects loop. So
Okay, what else we got? Justin wants to know why we are combining analog and digital technology in the first place. What was the thought process behind that choice?
Good question.
It's a great question. I think that there's a segment of players, myself included, even though I do use sometimes the modeling things like the Helix, Max Effects, things like this, Kemper, they're really cool and stuff, but there is a segment of players that really enjoy just reaching out and going, I want some more treble. There's my more treble. As opposed to, having to page through a menu, or, I just want more volume. There, I'm louder now. Or I want a bright. There, I'm done. That kind of simplicity mated with a few of the things that make digital so appealing to so many people.
Do they know what question you're answering? Can they hear Don?
I probably can.
They should be able to.
Probably through that mic, yeah. That's a good question, though. Yeah, they should be able to, right? You guys let us know out there in
yeah. Repeat the question.
Yeah, that's a great point. The question is basically like, why did we start off making, what was the sort of, impetus for coming up with a design where we're marrying some digital stuff with analog, tube technology?
I think the thing to remember is that even though there's digital and analog in this amp, it's still like all analog on every output except the IR output.
Absolutely.
And there is a bypass button where you can bypass the digital aspect of it. So it's kind of like the digital's there if you want it.
It's actually true.
Otherwise, it's still like a 100% analog tube amp, just like any other amp. It's just like there is the digital part there,
which is the IRs.
Yeah, it's not like you're always passing through digital.
Great point.
It's not like there's digital in series in the chain in here. It's just it's an option.
If you look at the inside of the amp, literally the digital component of the amp is about it's like this big. The rest of it is all circuit board and
standard
resistors and
standard tube
masters.
stuff.
Yeah,
I mean the digital too. I mean this is not really. It may look digital, but it's there's a microcontroller and then that's a brain.
Right.
You know, but it's just flipping switches and
Yeah.
and sending some data to the IR section to say flip it to this IR, flip it to that IR.
Exactly.
But
yeah, it's a tube amp. It's a killer
It's a
3-channel tube amp, and it's really just the simplicity of being able to plug into a great tube amp, which guitar players are used to and familiar with, and or maybe they've gone, you know, the modeling route and they're hearkening back for, man, it was simple when I used to just plug in and play.
yeah,
We wanted to give you that, but also give you a little bit of what's really cool about the, you know, because for me, once I realized how cool IRs are and how easy it makes getting work done, like for me, it's real world stuff. I've said this a lot recently where I realized like these sort of signature products that I'm helping come up with. My jobs as a musician has been like a lot of players out there, I would imagine, that are kind of like, you know, where you're you know, doing 2, 3, 4 sets of music. You got, you know, to maybe run from one gig to another. Like, in other words, I'm a touring sideman and session kind of guy. I'm not like, you know, somebody that gets to be like a rock star in their own band so much where I can have like whatever I want. It's like, no. I need something small, like relatively portable, that sounds amazing, that gets the job done, that and I want that job to get done like with the shortest amount of sort of junk between point A and point B, you know.
Yeah.
So I took it to a session after I picked up the first prototype, for example, and I walked in with my guitar, and I had you know, one effects unit, like small little board, and I had the head, and they had a cabinet all set up at this was at El Dorado in Burbank, like real, you know, pro recording studio. They had a nice cab set up, all mic'd and stuff like that. And I said, just to humor me and take the direct out and see what you think. And I gave them a 1/4-inch cable, and they plugged it in, and the engineer was like, well, that sounds great. Let's just move on. And then we got on to get with the session. You know, with 10 minutes after setting up my gear, we were tracking without working on miking or any of that stuff. He was totally sold on it, and they were very happy with the tone. So that kind of thing, like just getting the job done quickly, is sort of what we're thinking with this. I don't know. I just want to play. Like, I want to get to making music and have less. Sometimes I think gear seems to be designed by people that have some great intentions, like with a lot of ideas for, oh, what if it had this, and what if it had that, and what if we put this capability and that capability, and then it's like, okay, we can do that, but now we've got to have a menu system where we're paging through with to get to the different parameters, and there's a lot of parameters, and it's really, and you know, I always remember like a quote about a guy that had gone down the modeling road. It was on the gear page, and he said, my wife said something to me the other day that really struck me. She said, you know, like, because he'd gone down that road and been in that world for like 6 months or something. And she came and said, you used to play guitar. Now you just kind of fiddle around, like with knobs and or buttons
I felt
and
through
tweaking.
that too.
Really?
Yeah, like I won't name any names, but I had a unit that, you know, models amps and has all the 9 yards.
Yeah.
And I'd spend hours going through menus and be like,
tweaking stuff.
How much sag do I want on this? Well, I can't really hear any difference. Well, then it's like bias, and it's like there's so many amps, and then like I'd spend so much time, and I thought I had something really good sounding, and then I like listened to an album I liked, and I'm like, oh my god, like what I made doesn't even sound close.
And you'd work for a long time, like.
And I spent so much time, and then I would like record songs with it, and then later I'd hear the songs and be like, oh, I don't really think that sounded natural, you know.
Yeah.
And then like I ended up playing with, I think my dad gave me one of your PT15s back then.
Oh yeah.
And it was just like with a few knobs, it's like, there you go, it's done.
Right.
Like,
right.
I don't need to spend all the time.
Yeah.
And that was the same thing too. It was like back then when I was a kid, I couldn't play through the 4x12 really loud, and like even I tried miking it with an SM57, but my room sucked. So it was still kind of really hard to record anything, and that's like what I have fun doing is recording.
Right.
And so back then I tried the load resistor, like a flat load resistor,
right,
and like some DI boxes like the JDX and the Palmer.
Right, speaker simulator,
and I
analog.
was so excited because I was like, finally I'll be able to record the tube amp and just like go DI into my computer.
Yeah.
And then I was just like, ugh, this sucks. It sounds like crap.
So
And then
fast forward,
and then we made the reactive load.
Yeah.
And then I started using that, and I was like, okay, this already sounds way better, even with the DI boxes like the Palmer and stuff.
Yeah.
And then we worked on the Ace, which is the analog cabinet emulator. And you helped me out a bit with that.
I remember sitting right here in this room and doing tweaking the
we're trying
speaker sort of response.
Kind of moving up with the curve.
Yeah.
And then I made that as an analog unit. And so basically with the reactive load and that going DI, I was like, okay, that's what I wish I had, back then when I was trying to record my metal bands.
Right.
Like this would have been the dream for me.
Yeah.
And then, fast forward, I mean, IRs have been around for a while, but I didn't have like the plugins and I didn't have all the IRs. So I was like, I know they're more accurate to what a real speaker is. They're pretty dead nuts accurate, actually.
Yeah.
But the analog method was just easy for me. And it sounded like, because the analog is a smooth curve, it's like an average of all the frequency responses of a bunch of cabinets. So
right.
it just sounds like something pleasant and like neutral.
Yeah.
But if you're looking for that, like, I want that,
exact
Celestian blue speaker with all the hair and detail of it, the IRs is going to nail it.
Yeah.
But then, I finally got some of the IRs. I remember you gave me a lot of IRs.
Yeah.
I was starting to use those. I was like, okay, this is the way to go too. I mean, I still recorded a lot with the Ace, but doing the IR stuff too was just like getting more flavors. And then we did the reactive load IR, which put it all in one box.
Right.
I didn't have to go do this and then plug in the plugins and do all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then take that, and now it's in the amp. So now it's all in one, and it's like,
it's just funny because there's a certain amount of people that like comment and they say, oh, I wouldn't really want it in the same box because I want to use like different amps with it. So I get that, and that's what the reactive load IR is for. But there's going to be a certain amount of people I know where the ability to have a killer like versatile 3-channel head and it is all in one box. It's so simple. It's just one thing.
Yeah, because then you don't have to take the reactive load IR with you to a gig.
Yeah,
it is more gear.
It's more gear and more cables, and it's one more power supply. It's a great piece of gear, and I get it. Like I'm going to use mine all the time when I want to use a different amps for sure. Yeah. But to have it all in one, I mean, honestly, it's like when I'm like plugging in these days in the studio, I have my amp switcher and I use it, and I've got all my different heads and I use them. But 9 times out of 10, to be honest, when I'm going in to do like my work, which is maybe I'm recording a pedal demo or doing something or doing a session for somebody or whatever, I just turn this on.
Yeah,
because it's so fast. I know I can plug in and dial it up. It's like, well, that sounds great. Like, why do anything else?
Yeah.
So it's all in one box.
I really think we married the best of every world, like real tube, like tone and sounds, and then like the proper load to load the tube amp, and then like the best way to filter it with an impulse response.
Yep.
That's like, you can't get better than that.
I know.
In terms of like tone and like flexibility. I mean, you can try and go the digital amp and have it all like conveniently like in a small box, but in the end, it's like a digital model of what's exists already.
High voltage tube circuit.
Yeah. So you're not really compromising there, and in the end, you can still mic it if you want.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing with the cabinet too. I mean, we got this great little cab. That was sort of born out of, I always loved the little bit. I had a mini Marshall 410 in the 80s. It was like one of my first cabinets was a 410, like this size, and I always like those little cabs. They're light enough to get your arms around. You can pick them up. It's not that heavy of a cab really, but then there was some different people that came out over the years with the design with the 212s, which is like this one. And I was like, we got to do a cab like that, the speaker split like that, and have the little, because they sound like a little baby 412, really. It's got the depth and everything of, and anyway, so this one with the B30 in the bottom, the greenback here, you can mic whichever one you want if you want to get a different tone. It sounds killer in my recordings. I finally got my mic set up at the studio, so I've got the cab in the other room at my place. Yeah, so now I can easily switch between the line out, and the microphones really quickly, driving up my knees and stuff like that. It sounds really great. But yeah. And what do we got? We got 78 people online. That's not too bad. And I'll let you keep asking because some days it's like I got to get my prescription changed. I can't read for.
If there is someone in the chat that offered to give you bifocal contacts. I think Baltimore, he said.
Somebody did they really make bifocal contacts these days that are any good? I should be looking into that.
So Eric has a technical question about impedance.
Oh, okay.
How does the impedance and speaker outs work if you have, for example, 2 8-ohm cabs or 2 16-ohm cabs?
If you got 2 16s, you're going to want to set it to 8. And if you got 2 8s, you're going to want to set it to 4, the selector on the back of the amp. So that's how that works. So in other words, if you run, That's why if you've running the load at the same time in parallel with the cabinet and they're both 8, you turn the impedance down to 4, and then you're safe.
Yeah.
I see somebody's asking if we're going to do a 50 at some point, and will it be EL34s? The plan is to do a 50 at some point. It's we've always got like lots of plans and we want to do lots of stuff, but John's always a busy man and he's the man. And
he's out on the floor
right now
working on a guitar.
He's literally doing frets on a guitar right now out there. So he's got a lot on his plate all the time. But yeah, that's coming in the future. And we talked about as well, like with a bigger one, about the incorporating the load and having all that stuff. And I would like to keep it as small as possible and stuff like that. And so for the players that want a little more oomph and headroom and all that, for a 50 will come. It'll happen, but it's just a question of when. But for now, it's like the reality is, I think for a lot of people, this is going to be, I don't know, it's just like, how loud can you play these days? And it's surprisingly bold and punchy. And at gig volume, I was, like I say, I used it and I was like, I've got a show coming up a little bit later this month, and I'm going to take it again and use it, just one of them, I think, and just get a little bit back in the wedge, and I think I'm going to be just fine. So I think it's going to work out well for a lot of people for gigging, because where's the club these days where they're telling you you're not loud enough? Has that ever happened, like in the last 10 years, to anybody out there? Can you turn up? I can't hear the guitar. It's not something that I've heard in a long time, but
yeah, it's only getting louder on the masters, on the records.
Yeah, that's right. Records are getting louder. Yeah,
the stage is getting quieter.
Yeah, the stages are all getting quieter. It's like most stages, when you watch a band on the side of the stage these days, it's like all you hear is a drum kit, and sometimes you can't even hear that because it's behind plexiglass. So it's like you're just hearing the house be, because
speaking of drums, I didn't even tell you this, but Justin here, I was playing on the drums, and we stayed after work one day.
Oh yeah.
And I have my Apollo set up over there. So I had the mic set up. I had the whole drum kit set up. And we ran the line out of this.
Oh, cool.
Into the Apollo too.
Right.
So there's no bleed, obviously.
Yeah.
And then he had the headphones plugged into the front of the amp. And I had my headphones from my Apollo where I could hear him. So we were jamming, and I was recording the whole session.
Oh, great.
And then I took it home, and it's like there was the drum track, there was the guitar track. It was all separated,
nicely isolated. Yeah.
Mixed it together, and it sounded like a record.
Awesome.
And it was just like, dude, that was so easy.
It's so easy.
I was like,
yeah,
man, I really wish I had this when I was like playing around with my bands. I haven't played around in a band in a while, but
yeah,
when I was younger, that would have been like the dream.
And what's amazing is if you've never done a guitar direct kind of in the PA with like a real tube amp and using IRs, I don't know, like I've done it in big PAs where even back with Palmers and stuff like that, it's like, I remember the first time an engineer asked me to try Palmers on my guitar, and I was like, I don't know about those things. And in my in-ears, they never sounded that good to me. But they go, come out and listen to it out front. And I had my tech play on stage, and it was in a great big arena. And I went out front, and in the PA, like big, I'm doing this because like line array PA, like out in the house, they switched from the mics to the Palmers. And I was like, oh, and it just sounded like with the guitar player jamming with the band, it was so much more present in the PA because there's no bleed. It's just perfect. It just sounded like right at the front of the speakers. My guitar sounds
direct.
It's direct, but yeah. And so when you do it, and even the analog speaker sometimes can be a little dry and kind of, but you do it with IRs, and it's like that perfectly in your face, like really great speaker sound of whatever speaker and mic combo you choose. Yeah. And it just sounds like it's right. I don't know. It's just so without any bleed from the bass amp, and the microphone's not dangling off in the wrong place or something like that on the speaker. You can just nail the sound you want.
Yeah. It's the stuff of the future.
It's the stuff of the future. That's
and
true.
The best.
I like that. What else we got? That's all you got? Okay. Let me see. We got online here. I do need. Anybody got any reading glasses? How difficult was it to program each channel being able to access its own IR? I don't think very difficult, right? Is it?
No, not at all.
You seem to be like, hey, I think this is something I can do, and then on Monday you're like, yep, it's working.
Yeah, it's just there's one board that handles the impulse responses, and I basically send it like 4 bits to
Yeah.
control one of the 16 IRs. And then my like kind of brain in here, which controls the switching and everything, I just said, you know, when you're on this channel, and if we store something into memory,
Yeah.
Once you're back in that channel, I'll send that bit binary number over to the.
You're
impulse.
doing that big brain thing.
Yeah.
Where are you losing me?
Pete doesn't like where I go in the rabbit hole. But it's it was.
You keep telling.
It was easy.
Pretty easy.
Yeah. It was kind of like, yeah, I can do that, and we're like, yeah, that would be good, and then it happened.
Well, you did a killer job on it. That's for sure.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Would you say the distortion character leans more toward Plexi or JCM 800? You know, I would say that if you asked John, he would say the closest thing it's probably that it was derived from, I seem to remember him saying about a PT100 is really, it's kind of modded 800. But, you know, anytime you put a master volume in the circuit, I think it starts leaning closer to 800. But the reality is I can get, you know, with the gain lower and cranking up the master, I can, just like on an 800, you can get into Plexi territory pretty easily. Like it's just that balance of like turning the gain down lower and cranking up the master and maybe driving the power section a little bit harder. And it's like, once again, that's a super easy thing to do with this amp, is just, you know, depending on anywhere, if you've got the master on about 3 or 4, this is the overall master volume for the whole amp, and then this would be the channel master on, say, channel 2. You know, if you drive these up to, say, 4 or 5, and then these start creeping up, you're going to start to hear the power amp just kind of doing that big brawny 66 thing. It's super cool. And it's just becomes a really easy thing to experiment with. Once again, if you want to do the, like a cabinet in parallel with the internal loads, now you got 7 watts, which is like, for most, it's amazing how loud 7 watts still is. But
yeah, because I remember we had to do the math on that, but it's like, to double the volume, you have to quadruple the power.
Right.
So,
right.
You know,
to double. And what's double volume in dB? Is that like a, because I used to have that wrong. Is it like 12 dB or is
that's tricky because it's like SPL or like
right.
other methods, but I just think of it in power. It's like, if you have a 25 watt amp,
yeah,
and you want it to sound twice as loud,
yeah,
you need 100 watts.
100 watts, right?
Yeah. So it's like,
yeah.
So if you only double it,
yeah,
instead of quadrupling it,
yeah,
it's not like you're doubling the volume.
Sure.
If you go from 25 watts to 50 watts, it's not like you're doubling the volume.
Yeah.
So I mean, same thing. You know, if you cut it down, it's not like you're halving the volume too. It's still pretty loud. Yeah. But it is less. But...
let's see if I can read some others here.
Here's one from Bill, Pete.
Oh yeah, go
does
for
it come with a Footswitch for the channels?
It does include the Footswitch. Yeah. Hey, would you mind grabbing a Footswitch? Actually, is there one around?
Do we have one here?
I can show you guys the Footswitch because we haven't shown that yet. Okay, so somebody's going to grab one here. Justin's looking for it. Yeah, the Footswitch is pretty ingenious. It's just a simple TRS cable, like a stereo 1/4 inch.
Yeah. We wanted to make sure it wasn't going to have. Well, I mean, that's the cool thing with the PT100. It's got the MIDI kind of cable, but it's like a special one. It's like the 5-pin,
the 7-pin
MIDI cable. So at least the Footswitch can interact back and forth with the amp, and you can use MIDI. But we wanted to make sure that this would be easy and integrate with like basic switchers. You know, the tip ring kind of switchability, and
which is funny on my pedal board, which you've seen. I have it set up so that there's a couple of function switches on my Musicom Lab switcher that switch the channels on the PT100 and also switch the boost on the amplifier. Well, the way I had it configured, I could literally just take the out, so it was doing it through MIDI, through CCs, but it was also, that would double as function switches. So I could just take a 1/4 inch cable right out of or the TRS cable right out of the function 1-2 jack on my Musicom. I plugged it into the back of this and it switches everything the same as the PT. Cool. As a PT100. So yeah, here's the Footswitch. And it's just a super duper simple. You go over here and you can see that it's corresponding to the lights on the amplifier. So this is when everything's off, you're on the green channel over here. That means you're clean. Blue means you're on channel 2, blue. Red over here means you're on channel 3, the red one. So if I go like this now, that's going to take me back to the clean side. And because the red is on here, that means it's going to be preset on the lead channel. So when I switch that over, it's going to go back over the red. If I go like this, it's going to go between clean and blue. Hope that makes sense, but pretty basic and really easy to get used to in practice. And it doesn't need any, it's just powered from the amplifier right down the line, right? It's super simple.
Yeah, you don't need a battery or anything.
Yeah.
And it will work with other switches too.
Yeah. Really straightforward. Yeah, it will work with other standard
foot switches.
Yeah. And the two features on the PT100 that I think are really cool, but nobody ever talked about were the MIDI and the boost.
On the 100.
On the 100. Great sounding boost. It's a terrific sounding boost, but I guess maybe a lot of people have their own pedals or whatever, and they want to use their pedal. Every guitar player's got a gazillion boost pedals or distortion pedals or things. So that was a feature that just people didn't really mention that much, even though it is a really great sounding boost, I think. And the other one was the MIDI switching. It didn't seem like it was, I don't know if it, maybe people were just indifferent. I don't think people disliked it, but it was just the one feature that we, me personally, I just didn't hear people mention a lot. And I thought, well, what's a couple things so we could make the design a little bit simpler? I don't have so much stuff going on because we knew we were incorporating the load and the IRs, put a couple new features in there. So let's simplify maybe our PT100 design a little bit, and so that we can include those things and not have the amp, So, and the amp's $26.99 US, PT100 $29.99. It's $300 less, but it's packed with obviously the reactive load tech and the IRs and all that stuff. So that was another thing we wanted to kind of make sure the amp wasn't going north of some, because we knew it's, you know what I mean? There's cost for everything. So just doing a simple foot switch.
You don't need an interface to play with it through headphones.
Right.
You don't need to buy reactive load IR.
Yeah.
You can store 16 impulse responses. It comes with impulse responses.
Yeah.
You can lower the volume, you splitting it between the load and the speaker.
Yeah.
You can load your own impulse responses into it.
Yeah.
You can blend music through the front of it through the headphones and blend your guitar into it and practice silently.
Yeah.
It's ready to record.
Yeah.
If you go into an interface.
Yeah.
Those are all the things that the 100 doesn't have.
Right.
So
you had a lot to do with the kind of streamlining the build as well, and you came up with like a kind of an ingenious iPad way so that the guys downstairs that are building them, they've got a very simple, John basically called me one day and he said, Kevin's got this incredible iPad thing. It was basically, you could come down here right now and build the amp. You flip through the iPad and it gives you every step, and you were managed to make it really efficient, right? The build process. At least
it was the thing I worked on with the main boards. At least I didn't go to the whole build because it was going to take some time.
Okay.
And I got busy, but I did do it with stuffing the boards, where it's literally you can just look at the iPad and go step by step, and I'll show you what part to put where.
Okay.
And you can cut down the stuffing a board a lot. We are using people to stuff boards. We're not, using machines and pick and place machines.
Right.
It is hand soldered. It is hand stuffed.
Yeah, you can look out of the window right over here from this room and look down on the people that are actually making these things, right? And you're out there every day, and
I'm testing a lot of them,
making sure everything's cool.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with it. It's hand built in Southern California, and it's built by people that, I don't know. It's just this organization is like a real top down kind of thing, and it all starts with your dad out there on the floor with his obsessive kind of fanatical obsession with quality, and I love it. Yeah, but I love him for that, because he, it's funny. I just told the story before, but I bought a guitar once, and it wasn't one of his guitars, and I brought it to show him. And he took it from me, and this is because we still joke about this. But
I was there. I remember.
He took it from me, and he grabbed it and kind of looked over the top of his glasses, and he was holding it for about 5 seconds, and he said, "You want me to tell you what's wrong with it?"
That's the first thing he said.
And I just spent a bunch of money on this thing, and I was like, "No." Tell me, but that's how he sees things. He sees lines and he sees details and things that
it's kind of fanatical.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Cool
like a
OCD.
blessing and a curse.
Blessing and a curse. But I think it's a blessing for everybody out there that are, getting one of these or one of his guitars, because that's what it would instantly, I don't know, the obsession to detail. I tell you, when I got my first one, I bought it sight unseen. I'd heard about these Suhr guitars and how good they were. It was 2005, and I bought it from across the country, and this guitar showed up. I bought it used from somebody off the gear page. And it showed up, and I opened up the case, and I was like, "Oh, that's a beautiful guitar." It was the blue one that's in the How to Play Eruption videos that I did.
Oh, yeah.
That one. I wish I still had that guitar. I'm so dumb I don't have it anymore. But anyway, I picked it up out of the case, and I was playing it, and it was in tune when I took it out of the case, and I played it for about 45 minutes, and it was still in tune. And I thought, and I was just like getting lost in playing it, just unplugged. I hadn't even plugged it in yet. And I was like, wait a minute, I never tuned this guitar, and it's still in tune, and it came across the country in tune.
Yeah.
And I was just like, this is a really good guitar.
I
So
get spoiled with that too.
yeah, it does spoil you, right? Because then you play other stuff, and you're like, oh.
Yeah, I got this cheap Dan Electro for 12 string, and that thing goes out of tune like every 3 minutes.
Really? I'm buddies with the Dan Electro guys.
I love it. I love the guitar.
They're great. They're great. They're fun, cheaper guitars.
I use it. Yeah. I know. It's such a good value.
But they do. 12 strings tough to keep in.
Yeah, it's 12 string.
Have you guys ever made a 12 string? They make
Suhr
12. No. Yeah, they should make 12 string. It'd be cool.
But yeah, it's
definitely.
It's a tough thing to do.
Yeah, 12 strings are bare. Okay. What else we got here? I'm gonna go down to the bottom of the chat and just see what. Oh man, my contacts are really. I gotta go to my eye doctor. The deal with my lenses. I don't want to bore you with lens talk, but I wear these things called toric lenses, and they actually rotate on your eye, so they're like a focus on a camera, and that does astigmatism. So I'm nearsighted and astigmatism, and I got a wacky right eye, as everybody out there knows. I'm sure a long time ago. But anyway, the lens it actually rotates on your eye, and it's in focus when it's at just the right place. It's like weighted. And when I have a day where they decide they don't want to sit in just the right place, it's like an out of focus situation, and it drives me bonkers. Let's see. There's somebody. Mr. Park out there has a question. He says, "I have another question, a bit technical. What if just the reactive load stops working? Is there a way to tell if the reactive load works fine or not, since it may damage the transformer if it doesn't work? Would there be a reason it would stop working?"
I can't think of any reason it would stop working. It's all passive.
That's part of that obsessive attention to detail and quality overbuilt.
Yeah, it's a passive thing, and it's rated way higher than the wattage of the amp.
Yeah.
There's no reason it would blow up or stop working,
Right. And your amp's fully warranted, so you've got, generally speaking, I will say this with Suhrs, if I haven't, like a couple times, I haven't had a load connected to things when I've been messing around in the studio and I've been dumb, you'll pop a fuse. Not 100% of the time, but you'll pop a fuse before anything truly goes south. Don't quote me on that. You might be the one in the whatever.
You know how you would know? I guess the only way you would know if the amp wasn't connected or the load wasn't connected is you'll hear, like if you're listening to the DI output, you'll hear it distort because the output voltage goes up a lot higher.
Yeah.
And it will actually clip the DSP section. So if it's not loaded, you'll hear like digital distortion over the signal.
Okay.
That's one way to tell if like the load's disconnected, but it shouldn't be disconnected. It shouldn't not work.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Still think you two need to name a band that. What? If you build it, what do we need to name a band? Somebody's got a good band name for us. What else we got here?
There's a question in here about the aux in.
Oh, okay.
If you're using the aux to play over a track, will the track play through the cabinet if headphones aren't plugged in?
So the question is if a song is played through the aux in, will it play through the cabinet? No. They're separate. They're separate circuits.
Yeah.
I didn't want, any noise or anything to come from the aux to come through the output. So like, if you had nothing connected, or it was meant to be so that like you could run something through the aux input and hear it out your headphone amps, but what your main output, either to the speaker or from the DI output, would be without the aux, so you could isolate your guitar. And I mean, I guess there's some people that would want it to come out of the cabinet, but
Right.
music doesn't sound good through speaker cabinets.
Generally not.
Full bandwidth.
It's kind of amazing actually when you hear it, like just how much a guitar speaker rolls off. It's such a lo-fi sound. It's
it's around 5-6 kilohertz. It just starts going.
Yeah. Whereas your ears go up to about, if you've got good hearing, about to 16K or something. Most people, right? And there's treble all the way out. The presence.
I have pretty good ears.
Yeah.
I heard a 19 kilohertz tone the other week that was bothering me.
Really?
In a recording, yeah.
Wow.
It was on my tape machine.
Not enough rock and roll for you,
on my tape
evidently. You still got all your hearing.
Yeah. I'm always careful about protecting my ears.
Yeah.
I get tinnitus for like 4 or 5 months from really loud concerts, and I freak out. And so I bought custom molded earplugs and stuff.
Oh, good. Yeah.
But it was with the tape machine that I just got.
Oh.
One of the channels, I guess the record bias wasn't right. So there's like this 19 kilohertz tone on that one channel. It's like, what is that sound? And I mute that channel and it goes away and it comes back. And I ran it through my record so I could see it on the spectrum. I ran it through my interface and I looked at it. It was 19 kilohertz. I was like,
wow.
I guess I could still hear it there.
I can still hear maybe 15, 16, but it's just that annoying, you can barely, but I can perceive it almost more than,
Yeah.
And then like 14K and all that I can hear, but it's crazy. But we're gonna wrap up soon, or are we gonna? Okay. Anything else you guys want to know out there? I was gonna try and talk John into coming up here because he's in the chat down there. John, come up for 3 minutes. Come on. Yeah, he's been answering questions. It'd be great to have him here for a minute before we split. But let's see. Yeah, because I guess we've been going for about an hour, so we're gonna split pretty soon. Anybody wants to try one of these? If you've got a Suhr dealer, like I say, there's about 60 that went out in the U.S. to different dealers all over the place, and then maybe 30 Europe and UK, and then like 10 in Asia, something like that. So a lot of the dealers should have them in at this point. And that was the goal. Was today when we said this thing's available, that means that you can. There he is. That means that you can find him at your shop. Hopefully. There he is, Papa Suhr.
I'm going to be here all night.
Dad, I made it to the big screen.
Here, you can sit. I'll stand over here.
Oy.
Hang for a second. Somebody come up with some good questions for Don for the last. You have a seat of honor because you're the man of honor. Hi.
Hi.
What were you doing down there?
I'm dirty.
That's what we okay. Show
Fretting.
people your hands.
I'm fretting. I cut up. No band-aids.
No band-aids?
No.
You were working on it this morning when I got here.
Yeah, I know. Story of my life. I thought at this age I wouldn't be doing fret work anymore.
So this is an exciting day, right?
Yeah.
This finally.
I can't wait to take one home myself.
Did I drive you crazy, this thing?
Not with this thing.
No? Maybe with other stuff?
It was me going crazy.
It was Kevin going crazy. I kind of just threw it all at Kevin, but he did a wonderful job.
He did do a pretty wonderful job. Yeah. We've been talking a lot about all the great stuff that he came up with and streamlining the build and kind of all the innovations. And, it's really like a lot of it, the IRs and the load, and me kind of calling you and going, hey, wouldn't this be great? And you're like, oh. That's why I say that I drive you crazy. Because
I can't even remember where we came up with the idea of attaching the I think it was something I threw at you, right? I think
I know I was able to store, like I learned how to store stuff to memory and recall it.
Yeah.
And it was like, and I could do it after it was turned off and on and stuff. So it was like I could save these things and we could swap them for each channel.
But I can remember a time a couple of years ago where it was like we were talking about doing the ACE.
I'll walk over here.
Where we were talking about putting the ACE in as opposed to, and I was like, it'd be great if we could do IRs. I remember that. Yeah. And then you kind of just tackled it and figured it out. And
it was a very last minute thing. It was like, these were like all our dream features. And it was like, well, if we pull it off, we pull it off. And if we don't, we just come as close as we can.
And it all worked.
I think I said, well, if you're going to put IRs in it, you have to be able to assign different ones to the channels. I mean,
right.
And Kevin was like, ugh.
No,
it turned out to be not too hard.
Isn't it? That part was easy. It was the hardest part was laying out everything, finding the right place to put every internal circuit and like make sure it made sense and it wasn't going to crosstalk and it wasn't going to get noisy because this is next to the output, or
high voltage
this is next to the transformer, so I don't want to put that there, and it's like, or this might heat up, or so it was just a lot of thought. It was like a lot of mental thought, and I had to draw out like things by hand and like be like, okay, well, you know, and then the
wiring and all that stuff. It was just a lot of time. It was like all the pieces individually were pretty much figured out. It was just about putting it into one box.
Right.
And before we had it like a little less, we had it like we were trying to make it a little smaller.
Yeah.
And I was like screaming. I was like, please, let me just give me the size of a badger.
You know, it turns out that I mean, for me, this worked out great just on a selfish level because I've got road cases already for badgers. It fits perfect into my cases. And it's a nice size at the end of the day. It's like, it's 24.5 pounds. It's not, and it looks great on this cabinet, you know, and it's just kind of it fits your 112. If anybody wants a 112, they can pop it on top of a Suhr 112, which already exists, and it works with the Badger, so it'll work with this. So,
the guy
do you see anything there?
The guy says, "Who's a bigger pain in the ass, Kevin or Pete?"
We're both pain in the ass, right?
I think with Kevin, it was like, you know, how am I going to make all this fit? And I said, stop complaining, you can do it.
No, I bothered you a lot about grounding.
Yeah, grounding's always a bitch. That's black arts, voodoo.
Yeah.
And with you, it was Tolex and piping.
And I was like, to look cool.
Well, I know, but the piping, it's unbelievable. People don't realize how much the smallest feature can add a lot to the cost.
Yep.
And we're trying to keep everything as reasonable as possible. You know, sometimes it makes me crazy when people say, "Oh, you're charging because you can charge." No, we're charging because we make it here and we make it in our factory, and we have total control. Everything is done in the USA, and but you can't really say that anymore, which is kind of messed up because you have to say everything's assembled in the USA now.
Right, because so many parts just are made. The only place they make them is overseas. Like
the smallest things, like, you know, this is a genuine aluminum logo. It's not plastic or anything. So all this stuff costs money to make.
Well, I mean, these head shells, I can't imagine when you're gearing up to make 160 amps, you got to order 160 head shells. You got to order 160 face plates, which are all custom.
These are all brushed anodized aluminum.
Honestly, if you look at your faceplates compared to a lot of amps out there, like you will not compromise on this material, and even like down to the font and the way it's printed and the exact the tint of the lettering and stuff like you put so much time and thought into that stuff that it blows my mind, you know. And not the layout of the way that you, with the lines sort of delineating the different channels and stuff, you spent a lot of time just on that.
Well, funny enough, that was just a concept and it lasted all the way through. It's like everybody's like, yeah, sure.
Well, what great.
I like the logical layout of it. Really makes me happy because it's like you said before when I was listening to you don't get lost. You know, you've got your gain, your level, and your EQ here. It's very easy to get where you want to go.
Yeah, volumes and gains are on the top row, EQs on the bottom. Simple.
Right.
And then 3 bright switches. It's just so, that's what I was saying, because somebody was like,
has symmetry.
Yeah. Somebody was saying what prompted you guys to do like this kind of marriage of analog and essentially a little bit of digital technology under one hood. And I just said, well, it's because like if I want a little more gain, I can reach out and go, I can do it. I know where it is from right here. There's the gain on channel 1. I want more bass. There's the bass on channel 1, and boom, there's your more bass. You don't have to pay.
It's like I was listening to Kevin's story about when he had a device that, you know, and I remember when you first got that device, and I was like, all right, I'll help you figure it out. And I sat down there, and it kept on going bonkers on me. And I'll just shut it off, turn it back on, it reboots, and then you go crazy. It's like, you know, it's like funny. I'm even used to my old Bradshaw system. It seemed so easy to me. It was like intuitive. You turn on what you want. You hit store, preset 1.
Yep.
Done.
Yeah, the Bradshaw.
If you wanted to turn off a reverb, you just turn it off.
Yeah.
If you want to store it, store.
I really think that that's kind of the wave of the future. Actually, as things got more and more complex, the simplicity and sort of the elegant design, you know, for musicians, it's this way to, I mean, look at the reactive load and the success of it, because there's other boxes out there on the market that are really incredible and do a lot of things, but the reactive load, especially at the price point it's at and the way it sounds, and it's so damn simple to just dial up a sound, that a lot of people are like, done, great, sounds good.
I
job
can't,
done.
I
That's all I
can't
need.
stand option paralysis.
Yeah.
It makes, especially the older you get, you're like, I've got, say the wife's not going to yell at me for 2
Right,
hours.
limited amount of
She's
time.
shopping. I've got a little, I go up there and I wind up spending hours just trying to get a sound, where something like this, you could just turn it on and play.
That's I mean, that's an interesting point, because even for going from the busy guy that's got a lot on his plate, like even in his recreational player, to the pro that goes in the studio and there's the clock's ticking and it's time to get a sound, or you got a 10-minute sound check and it's like, let's go, to just dial it in. Done. I got a sound.
I really liked
Works across the
when we
board.
first got it all up and running, and I was like, hey, I could take the headphone out and go into my Bose computer speakers.
Right. We were talking about that.
And it's just like, yeah, that works.
And then you realize, whoa, it's 45 minutes went by and I've just been having a good time playing.
Yeah, and you can listen to music. I mean,
Yeah, you brought up ZZ Top. And
yeah,
just
pull up
jamming
ZZ
along.
Top. I mean, okay, let me learn this. Well, this is fun, and I can sit here and learn it, and I don't have to suffer.
That's everything.
I think that's one of the things. Is it made it really easy to practice along with music.
Right,
You know,
right.
Either whether you're playing it through the aux in and you're playing along songs, I'm like, oh, I actually should learn this.
Yeah.
So I could play along, or like even just going into your computer through the DI output on the back.
Yep.
You know, it made it really easy to play along with music.
Totally. Hey, I was going to say, if you guys haven't seen, one of my favorite kind of things I did with the amp while I was over in Europe at Thomann was this video with the fellow whose name is China Guitar Skeptic on YouTube. We took it in a room and he wanted to do a little demo with me on the amp. And I said, can I just get a studio monitor and plug it into the studio monitor? And I'll just start playing at the beginning. We won't tell people that that's what they're hearing. Just put a mic in the room, you know, a little camera mic back in the room, kind of like we got going now. And I'll just play. And then we'll tell people, well, this is what you're actually hearing it through. And it sounds really good to me in the video, just with the cam audio. And it's a little Yamaha, 199 powered studio monitor. And it's like a great guitar sound. And then he's talking, going, see, this is the same. So you can hear the volume of the talking.
I think somebody had a question of listening to the cab IRs.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, obviously you're not going to hear them through the speaker, but you could use a powered monitor or anything like that. And,
like you said, your Bose system.
Right. You can use that, or
literally you take the 1/8 inch out of here, like with a little 1/8 to 1/8, and run right into a little powered, like if you've got I was saying I want to take it home and actually plug it into my Samsung soundbar for my TV, with the sub. It'll probably sound good.
Probably sounds fine.
Or you could run it into like I remember years ago, a fellow running into, who's the fellow, Rockstar? You remember?
Oh,
the fellow
yeah.
that passed away a few years ago.
Yeah.
Nice guy.
Mark Abraham.
Mark, yeah. And
Yeah.
he used to run into, he'd practice in hotel rooms on the road, and he'd run into the aux in on his TV.
Right.
So and he'd play through the TV speakers, just to practice. I mean, you could do that.
Didn't he play with
Starship,
with
right?
Starship, that's right.
Yeah. Well, anybody else have any questions? We should probably
I don't know.
split pretty soon. But...
Don, can you read?
Yeah, there is a couple questions about the channels.
Okay, Rock and Chippy.
Yeah,
How you doing?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, they are, but it really doesn't sound the same because, well, I guess it would sound the same if you had the PT100 cranked, but the crunch channels are basically the same, but they're going to behave differently because you are squishing the output section. And funny enough, Pete and I did sit down and A/B'd it to the PT100, and we couldn't believe how good it sounded next to the PT100. We're like
bold.
Yeah, so we actually took the PT100 back in and checked it and made sure everything was up to power. But people are going to be really blown away at how big this sounds, and how loud it is.
I know, like
It's a comfortable. It's a real. It's like if I pull up the PT100, this is the volume that I would set it at.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's like, whoa! But the nice thing about
right
this is that the PT100 is just idling at that volume.
Right.
Whereas this is like you're starting to get the push-pull from the output section.
That's what I found. When people ask me, like, well, is this going to work? Like, what about headroom and stuff? I'm like, well, what I've found is that the volume that when it's cranking pretty good on this amp is kind of where I settle in at a gig volume anyway. Like on a PT100 Live, I use 2 of them. And I've got the masters between on the back, if anybody knows that amp, the return master on the back between about 2 and 3, which is not full throttle. It's like I'm turning the amp down a bit because for my gigs lately I have to do that kind of thing. So what I'm getting at is the where this seems to just kind of settle in, like you can put the master on about 4 or 5 And it's, to me, that's about the volume I play at gigs.
Okay, I got a few questions I could probably answer. Adam, when running the amp through a cab and the reactive load at the same time, the overall output of the amp is dropped no matter what, or no? No. Well, I mean, if you're using both at the same time, but there's 2 jacks on the back, so you can choose whether to have the reactive load active or disconnected. But if it's active, you have to consider it's like another speaker, so that would be another 8 ohm load. So you want to change the impedance selector if you're going to use an 8 ohm cabinet with the reactive load at the same time. So that's clearly marked.
We should just show people that like one more time real quick. Like,
So if you're
Yeah.
using the red jack here, the bottom jack, you plug in a cable there. Now the load is disconnected and you have to plug into a speaker cabinet. If you plug into the other one, now the load is in parallel with the speaker that's connected. And what you're going to want to do is half the impedance selector. So 8 ohm load in the amp, 8 ohm cabinet, set the impedance selector on 4.
And that's really a beautiful thing. It absolutely blows away any half power switches, pentode triads, or anything like that.
right.
Because the amp does not change in its response or its sound at all. It just drops 3 dB.
It's akin to having 2 cabinets connected.
Yeah,
Except
or
one's
it's
not a
akin to
cabinet,
it's
it's a
akin to a 50 or 100 watt amp, except the output section is not crippled, so it's not going to clip more. Like a 50
Right.
watt amp is going to clip more because the preamp is the same as what would drive, like in a Marshall, a 50 watt Marshall. It's the same output going into a 100 watt or 50 watt, but the 50 watt actually obviously has less headroom, so it's going to clip more. This won't. This is just going to lower your volume. So, and 7 watts, like you said, is still pretty loud.
Still pretty healthy. Yeah.
Does the master volume determine your power tube distortion or the channel volume as well? I'm not
Both,
sure.
right?
Well, the master volume is somebody else asked a similar question about what the relationship of the individual channel levels are. You got 3 levels compared to the master. Basically, what we decided to do is leave the loop in all the time because it's an all tube loop and it sounds great. So these levels are essentially could be looked at as your channel sends, and the master here is your power amp master. So
Which is on the return.
it's on the return. So the master here is basically your return level, and the individual channel levels are your send levels.
So if you got nothing plugged into the loop, it's kind of 6, so 1 half dozen the other. I mean, you can kind of bring them up and just balance your channel volumes, then use this as your overall master. If you're plugging effects into the loop, you're probably going to want to consider one extra thing, which is how hard are you hitting your effects?
But for a
So,
signal
right.
to noise ratio, I'd probably run the levels, around 4 or 5.
Seems
And
to
then
be where I settle.
lower your master instead of cranking your master and lowering them.
Yeah.
I would put them where they should be and lower your master if you want to play at a really low volume.
In practice, it seems like when I'm using it, especially with the load, I just lost one of our lights there. Especially with the load, and I'm playing and kind of driving the amp up pretty good. It seems like anywhere between 4 and 6 on both the overall master and the channel masters is where I end up using it all the time.
Eric Gruber, 4, 8, and 16, yes.
4, 8, and 16, yep.
Does the impedance selector also select the impedance for the load, or is the load? No, the load is a fixed 8 ohm.
Anybody else there?
Rock and Chippy clean his bellow like, oh yeah, Chris Cam. Yes, it is. But the interesting thing about the clean channel is there's so many different ways to use the clean channel. When you turn down the level, you will actually get a little brightness. So if you want to clean up the amp, you could turn down the level and the gain.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to get more sparkly.
Does it gets fatter as you turn it up, eh?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
There's less brightness on the level control as you turn it up.
Right. Cool. Well,
I don't know, Don, you see any other questions?
I don't think so.
lull, uncomfortable silence. No. I think we're going to split pretty soon because it's been a somewhat of a long day, and John's got to go back and fret.
I got to go finish the fret job.
But this has been fun. I'm glad you made it up here for a minute.
How are you?
It's awesome. I know you. It's actually a big deal because you don't like doing stuff like this that much.
I'm believe it or not, I'm not a detention whore. So.
Well, I got you guys here. Thank you so much for all of your effort, because this literally, I mean, it was like, I don't know, we've been doing this for a year and a half.
Three putting all our heads together.
Really, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and some other help from, you know, some other folks here and there, but it was really like us and you especially just, you know, really stepped up to the plate. So I thank you for all your, because, you know, I know it was when people once again, you know, they you know, if they gripe about anything, they're griping about stuff, and I'm like, look at this, you know, when it comes to prices or things like that, it's like this guy right here put a year of his life
Of my life.
Yeah, you know,
it's not just an amp.
There's no other mysterious engineers here or anybody else. I mean, we do have some help in purchasing and a great engineer, Seiki. But basically, it's just Kevin and me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you guys killed it. So
In
thanks so much.
Seiki. Yeah.
I'm really the greatest thing the other day was the one of the first customers in the UK that got his posted on Instagram, put up a picture and said, I'm still jamming and it's 2 a.m. and my wife's sleeping and I can't stop playing.
Yeah.
And this is so cool, you know, and that was like the best. That's what we want, you know, that's what we want to hear.
You know, another thing too that I really like about this amp is it's 2 6v6s. We could get more wattage out of it.
Yeah.
But we chose not to. It is 15 watts RMS clean. So we chose to stick with that. The tubes are very happy. They're not stressed. The amp runs cool because I had to imagine people are going to be running this thing all the time.
Yeah, well, that's true, because when you can run something hard, because now it's like easy to do, they will, right? So
it's something I have to re-educate people about. The reactive load is that people have like a master volume amp and they go, oh, I got a reactive load now, let me dime everything. No. Your amp's not going to like that, and it's not used to it. That's the most important thing.
Right.
Is your tubes. And now, I popped the tube. Yeah, well, because how do you normally run the amp? Now you're diming it. I tell people, don't run the amp any differently than you would through a speaker cabinet.
It's the equivalent of getting in your car and revving it up to 8,000 RPMs.
Yeah, and taking the wheels off.
Yeah, exactly. Taking the wheels off, just letting it spin and go, well, this is sure fun now. I can do this without any problems.
Let me see what the engine sounds like. No, it doesn't like that.
Yeah, so you're saying when you designed this amp, you kind of thought with that in mind.
Yeah, I thought in mind people are going to abuse it because they have the ability. So I was really conservative with the voltages that it's running at.
Right.
And funny enough, it kind of gave it some more of that brown sound.
Right.
You know, Variact is kind of built into it.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing. I mean, the SL68, like 9 times out of 10, when I'm using it, it's on the low voltage setting.
I love it on the low voltage. The low voltage it rules.
That's the magic. It just sounds. Eddie had it all figured out, I guess.
Yeah, he did.
You know,
he did.
It's just a great feel. So
I thought he turned it up. No.
Gonna get us in trouble. All right. Well, thanks guys for watching out there. We really appreciate you joining us for this exciting. This thing is everywhere now.
And thanks, Pete, for twisting my arm and being persistent and a good friend. And I think it's I can't wait for more people to get these in their hands.
Yeah. We're looking forward to hearing comments and stuff and what people think. I hope everybody just goes out and has fun playing and makes some great music. That's at the end of the day, that's what it's for, right? So
yeah, make music.
Awesome. See you guys. Thanks for joining. All right, just gotta hit the end screen there.